Hey, what's up guys, Grace here, and in today's Anthem video, we're going to take a deep dive into the crafting system. Many of you might have dismissed this feature thinking it's not that important, but surprisingly enough, BioWare managed to make it extremely useful not only through most of the leveling stage, but even more so at the end game. That's why we're going to take a look at the basics, best ways to make use of it, and how to eventually unlock the more powerful Masterwork Blueprints for the end game. So if you enjoyed this, a like would be super appreciated, and let's get to it. First, let's start with why you should make use of the crafting system as early as possible and why it's not needed to save every single piece of material you might find at lower levels. Well, the biggest plus is that you can always stay ahead of the power level curve and never feel underpowered because you just went to the next level tier. When crafting a piece of component or weapon, it always scales up to your current pilot level, which means that you can always replace the old tier stuff with much better ones. It's also generally not worth it to save your crafting mat at low level for three main reasons. First, because the lower tiers of Ember will not be of any use and pretty much become obsolete by level 30, especially the green and the blue ones. Second, because by level 30 and even more so beyond that, you'll be simply bombarded with gear to salvage and get hundreds of materials in the process. Third and last one, because you won't be crafting entire batches of items anyway at low levels, since you won't be looking for god rolls. That is something you'll be doing by level 30 and beyond that. But with that being said and done, let's move over to the basics of crafting. It goes without saying that in this game you can craft pretty much everything that can be equipped on your javelin as long as you've unlocked the blueprint for it and have enough materials. There are 5 types of crafting materials in the game, including the chimeric alloy, chimeric compound, the weapon parts, the javelin parts, which are 4 for each specific javelin, and finally the embers. When crafting an item, you'll be using a combination of 4 of these depending on the type of item is that you're crafting. The chimeric alloy, the compound, as well as the embers themselves will always be used as base materials. Meanwhile, the weapon parts are used strictly when crafting weapons, obviously, while the javelin parts are used when crafting javelin specific gear or components. Out of all of these materials, only embers have several tiers of quality, from uncommon all the way up to masterwork, but everything else other than this stays as white items. This also means that the current highest quality item you can craft using the crafting system is Masterwork. Meanwhile, the legendary items, which are also the highest tier currently in the game, can only be found as loot drops. Now the question you might have right now is, how do you get to unlock more blueprints? If you're at level 1, you probably already started with a couple of common level ones, but what if you want to unlock more? The answer is rather easy, and I'm going to split it for each individual item you can equip it as well as for each category. Starting with the weapons, in order to unlock a blueprint for a specific gun, you first have to get that gun as a loot drop and then complete several tiers of challenges by using it. To check how close you are to unlocking a certain weapon blueprint, you need to check the challenges tab and then go into the weapons section under the appropriate weapon you'd be using. To give you an example, let's take this Devastator sniper rifle, and you most probably already had this drop by random at some point. It doesn't matter which quality dropped for you at first, you will need to unlock each tier of quality starting with uncommon by simply using it. The level requirements are self-explanatory and they require you to defeat a certain number of enemies, starting with regular ones and then moving all the way up to legendary enemies, but as I've said, you can see it all in the challenges tab. But now you might be wondering, what about the Masterwork Blueprints? The short answer is rather simple. Unlocking the Masterwork Blueprint for a certain weapon can only be done after first getting the Masterwork version of that weapon as a loot drop and then using it to complete an additional challenge, which is typically defeating 10 legendary enemies on top of the ones you already defeated. So it's really easy and you can track them under the challenges tab just like before, except this time around you're going to see them as named weapon, as each masterwork and legendary variant of a certain weapon actually has a distinct name. What this means is that you can't unlock masterwork level blueprints by simply using an epic or lower level quality one, but the vice versa is possible. So for example, you can use a masterwork weapon and unlock the previous tier blueprints that you don't already have. So for example, if you don't have the epic version, you can complete that one using the masterwork version of that item. I hope I've explained it enough, but you can also see that on the screen right now, and I've done this in one of the dungeons. Basically, I was able to unlock the epic quality blueprint for the Deadeye by simply using the Masterwork item, as it worked for the previous tiers as well. The same goes with the legendary weapons, and you can definitely use them to unlock the Masterwork Blueprints. In fact, unlocking the last tiers for most weapons always requires you to defeat a certain number of legendary enemies, and by far the best way I found was to simply queue up in a stronghold on the easy difficulty, for example the Tyrant Mine, and defeat the handful of legendary enemies that typically spawn in the very first room. There's like 2 or 3 of legendary snipers in the first room by the relic, and about another 2 right outside where the rest of the orbs spawn. Additionally, going to the free play mode is also possible, but I found it to be much faster doing this method, doing it in the Tyrant Mine in the first area, and after like 2 or 3 times repeating this, you will pretty much complete that challenge, as you can defeat anywhere between 3 to 5 per run, and you don't have to stick up until the end. Unfortunately, the free play mode for me has proved to be unsuccessful because I didn't find enough legendary enemies to defeat, and for the most part, in order for them to spawn, it's always required for at least a few players to be in the area, or at the very least that's what I'm being told. So yeah, there you have it. Now in terms of gear, aka the spells or ability slots, they follow the same principles, as in you need to first have them as loot drops and then continue to use them to complete the certain challenges. This time around though, instead of having to defeat a certain number of enemies, the challenges require you to complete either missions or world events, or both. You will need about 24 total missions and or world events to unlock a gear piece all the way up to epic quality. As for the Masterwork version, again you need to have the Masterwork variant drop for you as loot, and then use that to complete about 35 total missions and world events to unlock the Masterwork blueprint for that specific items. If I were to make a suggestion here, if you truly want to unlock these as fast as possible, by far the best method is to simply complete world events in free play. It's much faster than queuing up in missions, in contracts and all of that. You have about 2 hours to stay on a server and complete as many events as possible, and trust me, you'll be doing them like every 2 to 5 minutes, and you'll be doing this in no time. Otherwise, all of the other principles pretty much remain the same. Now moving over to the components and the sigil blueprints, I'll treat them as their own category, as they both unlock in a very similar way. Components, which are essentially the trinkets of this game, have their blueprints unlocked by simply finishing up all tiers of standing with the freelancers and the sentinels. All components are split between freelancers and the sentinel ones, and rank 1 unlocks you the green versions, rank 2 the rare one, and rank 3 the epic quality. The same goes with the sigils, except you will need to complete the Arcanist standing required to unlock them. Now in terms of the Masterwork version of these items, these can only be rewarded after first reaching rank 3 standing with all of the 3 factions, after which a 4th secret challenge appears that requires you to increase the standing by a huge amount with all 3 of them. I believe it was somewhere around 15,000 if you want to like unlock the Masterwork version of these items, and that is quite a lot. I don't really have it unlocked right now because I haven't finished all of the 3 tiers for all of the factions, but yeah, it's for the most part on the internet. It's really hard to find it because not many people have finished it already, but in the meantime you'll have to rely on the epic ones, or simply have them as drops randomly from certain enemies or encounters. This is of course except for the sigils, which don't drop at all. You only craft these, they never drop, and you can only get them as blueprints from the Arcanists. Finally, let's take a quick look at some of the best ways to get crafting materials, and this is mostly aimed towards the max level players. The 2 best ways is to first farm as much as possible in the free play mode, either from the crystal and organic nodes, secret chests, or by completing as many world events as possible, which further reward you all of these items as well as stuff to salvage. And this brings me to the second one, which is of course salvaging all of the unnecessary gear you will have laying around your inventory, and trust me, after reaching level 30 you will get a lot of items to salvage, to the point you will have thousands of each of the materials, well except for the Masterwork Ember. This also brings me to the third method, and that is of course my preferred one, which is by completing legendary or regular contracts as well as strongholds, and you'll get dozens of salvageable items per run, and eventually you will be pretty much filled to the brim with crafting materials. The only real challenge here is the actual Masterwork Ember, which all of the blueprints require 25 of, so that is quite a lot, significantly more than any other Ember in the game, and they do drop randomly but in rather small amounts. So I found the best way to do it is by completing challenges that reward you hundreds of embers, or by simply scrapping Masterwork level items that you don't really need, and trust me, you're going to get a lot of useless Masterworks as well as duplicates. But that is all there is to the current crafting system. Hopefully this made everything clear to you and helped you out better gearing up your character. So if you enjoyed this, As always, a thumbs up would be super appreciated. Also hit that subscribe button for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.